target.
Alright, chamber pressure looks good.
Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly!
Tango Delta nominal.
Fighting down feed off. Bring in, feed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Hello and welcome to another edition of NSF Live, where we talk about all kinds of spaceflight stuff. We've got several topics to talk about today. But first, I am your host for today. I'm Stephen Marr. I'm one of the photographers around here. And joining me today on this side, I have Adrian Beil. How you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
And over here, we've got Ian Atkinson. How you doing?
I'm doing great as well. Glad to be here.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we've got several topics. I'm going to give y'all a taste. We're going to be talking about Starlink, this Atlas V launch. We've got Astra coming up. We've got Artemis, and of course Starship. So get your questions in the queue. Use that @NASASpaceflight tag. That way we can see that, and we'll get those questions queued up. I don't even have to ask because everybody's already given the 5x5 in the chat. So apparently we're looking good. We're sounding good. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Let's kick it off. We were having some discussion. What should we talk about first? And I made the not so executive decision, but I pointed out that, I mean, come on, launches are the best thing that humans do, right? So first, we'll talk about Starlink. You know, oh, grown Starlink. It's another Starlink. Well, they're still exciting to me. How about y'all? What do you know about this latest Starlink? I know that we not long before we had a tweet from Elon giving us the active number. Do you guys remember seeing that?
Yeah,
the
that was
number of satellites.
Yeah, it was 1,469 Starlink satellites active.
Unreal.
So yeah, that's a lot of satellites, and it seems like they want to start this year with not slowing down in launching these. Another Starlink launch, Starlink Group 46, launched from 39A, and yeah, another 49 Starlink satellites added to the whole constellation at this point. And which also should be mentioned, it was the 10th flight of B1060, which successfully touched down on a short fall of gravitas. So yeah, overall a very good launch.
And how many boosters have now done that? 1, 2, 3, number 4. That was the fourth one to do it. Which followed not long behind the third one to do it, which was
58, I
Thank
believe.
you. Yeah, actually, yeah, it was the NASA worm booster, Bob and Doug's booster. So it's impressive. I mean, you know, when they had their first one hit 10, it was impressive, and it's still impressive. They've got a couple now that have, or is it just one that has 11?
I believe 2 of 11, 51 and 49.
Yeah. Okay.
But those are older generation boosters, so they're probably starting to phase them out slowly as it gets tougher and more expensive to refurbish them.
Mm-hmm. What do y'all think? You think they're going to keep on pushing these Falcon 9 boosters? Are we going to see 15 flights, 20 flights? Do you have any just wild speculation?
So to hop on what Ian just said, I think the newer generations of boosters, I see them going, like, for example, B1060. I could see them pushing for high numbers with that booster, and yeah, really wanting to see how far they can push these. But maybe with these older, early Block 5 boosters, at some point we might see them being slowly removed from the fleet, or doing like an expendable mission, one of these maybe.
Now, when you say the older ones versus the newer generation, is there like a number you look at, like starting with 1055, that's the newer one, or is it more just like a progression? You know, 53 is a newer generation than 51, and 57 is newer than 55. Is there like a point where it's like there was some kind of change made, some kind of update, or is it more of a gradual thing, do you think?
Well, there are some visible changes on later boosters compared to earlier ones. There's been changes to how the interstage is mounted, And I literally can't think of any others off the top of my head, but there have been changes, and we can definitely tell that there have been changes because SpaceX is flying newer boosters, reflying them much quicker than they've reflown older boosters, like such as B1060 and B1058 have reached 10 flights quicker than other boosters have. So it shows that there's been some upgrades as they learned along the way.
Yeah.
Now, there's not any major news on what's going on. Of course, little tweaks like, okay, this could be made better. This could be made better. Maybe don't do this. And as they learn those little steps as they go along, it starts to get faster and faster and easier to reuse new boosters, which is probably the reason why they're starting to phase out the older ones, because it's while it is nice to get extra flights out of boosters, it's become to the point where it's going to take so much time and so much effort that why not renovate 2 boosters at the same time as it takes to renovate 1 older booster?
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, because in this booster, I remember its first flight, actually. It was a GPS satellite, and that was in June of 2021. So we're a little over a year and a half since its first flight. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's incredible to me. It's just it blows my mind.
Mhm.
We do have a couple of questions coming in. Did you have something you were going to say, Adrian?
Now, I just wanted to say that I found it amazing as well how fast these newer boosters are reaching these high flight rates. So always cool to see how more and more boosters are used, and basically every launch of SpaceX at this point is an old booster. Almost every launch is an old booster that already has been to space.
Yeah, we don't see many new ones. Although there was a new one somewhat recently.
Yeah.
Let's hit some questions. We got Dan Snelson saying, how many Starlinks would they need to remove for an RTLS, or would they just expend the booster if drone ship was unavailable? Oh, that's kind of that's a double whammy question there. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, how the first part of the question, how many would they have to remove? So they just launched 49 into that southeast trajectory. Now, maybe another question people might ask is, oh, actually, I see one down there. Brandon, land space stuff down there, asked this question. Why only launching 49 instead of 60? Of course, when they do this southeast trajectory, they're doing a dogleg thing to make sure that they don't overfly land. And then they landed on the drone ship kind of near the Bahamas. But anyway, I don't know if I filibustered enough for either of y'all to come up with an idea. Like, would they have to reduce to like 40 Starlink satellites, or what do you think?
So I just did a very quick Google search and a very quick mental calculation. They'd probably be able to lift about 30, maybe 40 Starlink satellites to be able to do an RTLS, because with their early CRS missions, the resupply mission to the space station, they could RTLS. And I looked up some of the masses there, and it was about half of a full Starlink stack, maybe a little bit over that. So
Wow. I was going to point out with this southeast trajectory, it might even be lower because to do the dog leg, they're expending extra fuel. But if they go northeast, they're not concerned with downrange weather for landing the booster, so they could just totally just use that northeast corridor and not have to expend extra fuel doing the dog leg, right?
exactly, yep.
Am I thinking that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. Avenger asking, why have they not used Slick 40? They have used Slick 40, right? Yeah, they used it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember setting remotes not too long ago at Slick 40. I think it's just like they just alternate between 39A and 40.
Yeah, exactly. And it depends because some missions take longer to prepare. So, like a Starlink mission will be quicker to integrate than, say, a commercial payload. So, the fact that they use 39A now probably means that they're getting ready to launch something out of 40, which I believe is actually the CSG-2 mission, which is a commercial satellite launch coming up. So, they sort of alternate the pads, and it also depends on how did the pad fare during the most recent launch, what renovations do they need to do to it, because after every launch, there is some sort of refurbishment that needs to be done to a launch pad. Even with the rapid turnaround that Slick 40 and 39A are designed for, you still are going to have some pipes or some cables ruined or burnt that you're going to need to repair. It's not going to be like, okay, just roll the thing back in, stack another rocket, and go.
Right.
So it depends on a lot of factors.
And they had to manage quite a cadence so far this January. And as Ian just said, they need to be ready for CSG2. After that, probably another Starlink from 39A as well, which currently might be happening in a few days from now. So they are basically turning around these pads as fast as they can right now and make sure that they can use these for all the launches they have planned. So they are really in cadence.
Yeah. And an interesting point, as far as like the amount of Starlinks they have up there, I don't know if y'all saw it, but Jonathan McDowell, who we've obviously we've had him on the show. He's sort of someone that we look to as far as like tracking orbital objects. He noticed that there were 12 satellites from the L-22 launch, which was last March, almost a year ago, have been lowered into a re-entry altitude. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? You think there's a problem with maybe some of those?
It was interesting that it was so many sets from one single launch. So it's either, I mean, it could be that they tested something on that launch in this particular satellites or in this particular launch, and that just did not go as they wanted, or like there was a problem with the launch or with the whole release. I mean, the problem is we obviously can only speculate at this point, but yeah, I would say that out of 60 satellites, 12 lowering their orbit is at least significant to mention that there's something maybe going on there.
Yeah, like some of them were kept at that 350-kilometer altitude, and then ultimately they did a retro burn to bring them down. And I don't know that they have actually re-entered. Actually, this chart may be indicating that they did. I think that sharp drop is them actually re-entering. Is that right?
Yeah, like the exponential downward drop becomes because they come closer and closer to the atmosphere, so they just get dragged right down.
I wonder if maybe some of them are bumping into each other, and and that's all it is. Like as they're released, because they're stacked pretty close together, and they're allowed to just kind of drift apart. I wonder if some have just bumped a little too much. Let's see. We've got a couple other questions, sort of along these lines. Robbie Rob asking, how come the fairings don't need an entry burn, even though they re-enter the atmosphere at a higher velocity than the first stage?
Well, the fairings have a heat shield on the outside of them. It's not the same kind of heat shield as like on Dragon, so you're not going to see like black heat shielding on them, but they do have thermal insulation and some sort of ablative heat shielding on the outside of them, and it's much stronger, and the fairings are much less delicate than the engines of Falcon 9, so you don't need to have as strong of shielding on there. And there's even some holes in the side of the fairings, which are totally normal. There's little, if you look before launch, you see little like triangular plugs sticking outside of the fairings.
Yep.
Those are designed to rip away to vent the gas out of the fairings. There's been videos shown from SpaceX inside the fairings, and you can see the reentry heating just coming up through those holes in the fairings.
Yeah.
So there's a lot less stress and a lot less strict guidelines, for lack of a better term, on fairing reentry, because you're not dealing with an engine with thousands of moving parts that needs to reignite or else you're not landing. It's basically just a big hunk of carbon fiber.
Right. And it's just a lighter hunk of stuff, and it's broader, and I think it can slow down more quickly, rather than like a Falcon 9 falling through the atmosphere. It's shaped like a pencil, so it doesn't have a whole lot to slow it down, so that heat builds up and can cause damage before it has a chance to slow down on its own.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, you have the situation as well that Falcon 9 needs to steer itself still, and basically it needs to be turned on. It needs to be doing some operations after this. The fairing is way more idle during this whole process, and basically only needs to deploy these. They're still like these parachutes, and after that it can be fished out of the sea. The Falcon 9 needs to land. It needs to work fully.
Right, and actually we can use Electron as sort of an example of, it's a much lighter booster, so that it doesn't have the tendency to maintain that velocity. It'll slow down more quickly, and so they're not using a re-entry burn. Right? Am I thinking about that right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Here's one of mine. I was actually gonna. I got this from Kennedy Point Park in Titusville. First time I'd ever been there. I'm gonna sit back, everyone. I'm gonna tell you a photography tale. So I don't know if I just was underinformed, but I didn't realize with this launch they had a second window. They had one at 7:04, and I was out in Cocoa Beach. If anybody's ever been to Cocoa Beach and they know where Coconuts is, right there on Minuteman Causeway, I was right there and waiting for the launch. And then we got the word that they were actually pushing it a couple hours. They were going to go for 9:02. And so, bummer. But that's not too bad. It's not a whole day delay. So I head back to the car, break a few hearts on the way back to the car because there's people walking to the beach for the launch, and I'm like, hey, if you're here for the launch, it just got pushed back 2 hours. But anyway, I just get in my car. I'm sitting there, and I realize that the moon was coming up as I was out there on the beach, and I wonder if there's somewhere that I have enough time to get to where I could get Falcon 9 at least close to the moon, right? So I pulled up a handy tool that some of us photographers use called Flight Club. It's a awesome website that has all kinds of neat tricks it can do. But for me, I use it for its photography tool, and you can line up things and plug in whatever launch it is and the trajectory, and you can line up things. And one of those things, you can line it up with the moon. And I figured out that if I just go up to Titusville, it was total happenstance too. I wasn't even really looking for a good public spot. I was just moving it around until the alignment worked. And then whenever I put those coordinates into Google Maps, it's like, oh, hey, you're right there at Kennedy Point Park. I'm like, okay, gotta go. So I went on up to Titusville, and it was pretty dang close, I will say. It didn't. The rocket did not cross the disk of the moon, but it was pretty close. And what's funny is I started bumping into other photographers, and some of them I didn't. But then after the fact, noticed that we all had shots from a similar spot because we were all using Flight Club, and noticed that this very close pass would look at all those people. Yeah, there were a lot of people there, and they were braving the cold. They were shivering in the 50-something degree Florida weather.
That's a cool shot. Then
50 degrees is cold.
It is cold when you're standing next to water, I think, but yeah, I was really happy with the way this streak turned out. It kind of looks like a diamond, almost like an eclipse, how you'll get that diamond ring effect right before totality and right after totality. Let's see. I don't want to linger too long on photography stuff. Let's see if we've got any other Starlink questions. Oh, and here's one from Brady. Brady was down south in Cocoa Beach and shot this one. I love it.
Oh.
Okay, so Pablo asking, how many Starlink satellites with lasers are in orbit or on their way to orbit?
So there was another tweet by this person called Elon Musk, I think. No, not the laser. Sorry, he was talking about moving to. Yeah, I'm not sure.
There's, I'd say like a few hundred satellites with laser links. Not many compared to the satellites without them, but they're slowly migrating to having those because having laser links means you don't need to have as many ground stations. Because right now with Starlink, they have to bounce from a ground station to satellite to ground station to satellite. But with laser links, you just go from ground station, satellite, 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 satellite user.
Right.
So it makes it a lot less latency. You don't have as many ground stations, and you can reach, say, like remote islands like Hawaii without having extra ground stations. Or you can go from the Atlantic to Europe, or sorry, from America to Europe.
There was that discussion on Twitter. I'm not sure that it's reached a conclusion, but they were talking about it was a country that was going to be without internet, and then someone tagged Elon, and he's like, if we can help, then sure, but I'm not sure that it'll help. Has there been any more news on that? I know that laser links were sort of a requirement for that.
Yeah, I don't think there's been any more word on that. And that was the kingdom of Tonga, which was devastated by the very unfortunate volcano eruption in the past few days.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like it may not be likely that can be fixed anytime soon, because again, there's no ground stations nearby that you can bounce like a signal to satellite to Tonga,
Mhm.
and they don't have enough laser link satellites to have reliable, continuous connections. You could probably have occasional connection, but that's not incredibly useful.
Yeah.
And plus, they're not even operational yet right now.
Ah, right. Yeah. And I think I'm probably wrong about this, but I think when they moved the nomenclature to the group 4-6, these are version 1.5, aren't they? Or is
Yes.
that across the board? That's true. So those are
Yeah.
the ones that do have the laser link, right?
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Let's see. Hit a couple more questions and then we'll move on to the Atlas launch. Oh, we already answered that one. Let's see. When do you think Starlink will start to be able to meet demand? I've been waiting for almost a year now.
Um, I think their main problem right now is making enough ground station or no, enough user terminals. So the satellite dishes that they send to. I think that's the main bottleneck right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not being helped at all because of the worldwide chip shortage, which is the reason why, say, computer graphics cards or Teslas are so expensive right now.
Yeah.
So I think we're really going to have to wait for new semiconductor factories to open up over the next year or two to let them really ramp up terminal production.
Yeah. And Paul Kelly wondering on that next flight for CSG, is that going to be the first RTLS from their Dodge Cuba trajectory? Never heard it called that, but
It'll be.
they've done they've done the polar trajectory. Are they talking about something different?
I think it's around the same trajectory because I think CSG2 is going to either a polar or a sun synchronous orbit, which are similar but not the same orbits.
Mhm.
But we've seen them do the dogleg around Cuba maneuver, the don't drop a rocket on a cow again maneuver, because we've seen them do it, I think, about 3 times already, 2 or 3 times on the transporter missions.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Pauline Brock asking when will just read the instructions be repaired? I think I could cover that and say we don't know.
Yeah.
I
I
saw them
mean,
doing work. I drove past the port the other day, saw them doing work on the deck, and you can't glean much from just driving by on the road.
Yep.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the answer to this is it's ongoing,
Yeah.
probably. And yeah, we will see when it's done, when it's going out for another mission.
Yep, exactly.
All right, let's move on to the more recent of these two launches that we had. One that a lot of people were really excited about because it's unique and it's strange and it's asymmetrical, and that was the Atlas V in the 511 configuration, or as DOS likes to say, the 551 configuration. If you were watching our
Or
stream, you'll get
DOS.
that joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a very interesting launch, and the cool thing about this was it used only one solid rocket booster strapped onto the side.
Mhm.
And when people first hear of just having one booster strapped onto the side of the rocket, they might think, well, wouldn't that be unstable having the core stage pushing and then a solid rocket booster just pushing? Wouldn't it flip it like that? But the cool thing about Atlas's side boosters is the nozzles are actually turned inward a little bit. So
Mhm.
they're pushing through the rocket's center of mass. So instead of just tilting off the pad, you could see right there, it's sliding. Look at
Right.
the engine plume compared to the angle of the rocket. You could see the engines are sort of angled to keep the rocket flying straight, but a little bit sideways. And that's what gave it the name Big Slider. That's the
Yeah.
official nickname of this rocket is Big
Right.
Slider because it just slid a little bit off the launch pad from the asymmetric thrust.
Right. The big comes from the fact that it had the 5 meter fairing as opposed to the four, because the 411 configuration has flown several times, but
Yeah.
never the 511 with the 5 meter fairing. So
Yeah.
Tori nicknamed it the big slider.
Yep. And yeah,
Love
it
these shots
was.
of this. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. This was really cool to see the launch because you could see it's just one booster on the side. And if
Mhm.
you've seen, like, look at that. If you've seen rocket launches before, that doesn't look right.
Right.
Like, there's just something
No.
weird about that.
It looks odd. I was gonna throw this out to chat. What did y'all think about having a secondary angle? I was able to bring a second angle from down in Cocoa Beach. I thought it was cool having all the people in the foreground. People are just hanging out on the beach. Let us know if you dig that. Um, and then I also wanted to pose this question from NASA Spaceflight Fan 44. Why is the USS F8 the first and only 511 launch.
I mean, that always depends on what is the mission requirements for these. And as they will always look at what do they need in terms of Atlas configuration. And with this, as we mentioned before, the 411 flew before, but obviously for this they wanted to have the 5-meter fairing. So it's more of a what comes together in terms of what do we need as a configuration. And yeah, that's the reason they use the 511 for this.
And let's see, what do we know about the payload? I know that it was for the Space Force, and a lot of times we don't have all that much information, about DoD type payloads. But what do we know about these?
So actually, it was 2 satellites. If I want to start, but you can go ahead because I don't know much, Ian.
I don't know too much either. With the thing is with like the Space Force satellites, where it's like USS F8, oftentimes there's limited, if not any, details. There were some. What was it? There were some details released about this mission. There were 2. What is the name of them? It's a big acronym. So GSSAP, Geosynchronous Space Situational Awareness Program satellites.
That's it. Yeah.
And yet there were 2 on this mission. They were flown to a near geosynchronous orbit, which means that they were flown up and not put directly into a geosynchronous orbit, but close enough to where they can relatively quickly, relatively easy, make their way to orbit from there. So it wasn't a direct geosynchronous orbit like we've seen before with 5, but it was a near geosynchronous orbit.
And so when you say space situational awareness, what are we talking about there?
Yeah, so it's a lot of like classified information, but it's something along the lines of I can't even put it into words really. Just sorry, I'm totally
So
blanking out.
it's sort of like
It's
keeping an eye on other satellites, right?
yeah, it's like monitoring what's going on, what other satellites are doing, and sort of just like peeping at what they're doing. And that's really the whole point of this. And at geosynchronous orbit, you're so high up, you can see at other satellites in geosynchronous orbit, and you can monitor other satellites in Earth orbit. So that's the whole point of this program, is to monitor what satellites are doing, where they are, and how many there are, really.
Yeah, that's about as vague as we had it with, like, for example, the last China Shijian 13 mission, where they only also said it's space environment sensing.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, you're looking at something there, but
everybody wants to see what's going on, but nobody wants to say that they want to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of creative wording to say, oh, we're just, it's situational awareness, as they just peep at other satellites.
Yeah, it's like when if I peek out the blinds in my house, I'm like, this is just situational awareness, just seeing what's going on.
Yep.
Let's see. Musical Wolves asking, has ice falling from the rocket damaged the pad ever? That is an interesting question.
Falling ice.
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, these pads are built to withstand pretty high forces. Usually not ice, but heat and thrust. But I would have a hard time imagining that a bit of ice would hurt the pad if it withstands the loads of engines firing.
Yeah, and again, like the ice coming off the rocket is not thick. You're not having like a 1 foot by 1 foot block of ice falling on the pad. It's more like maybe like a few inches thick of ice that falls off the rocket, and then it's just shattered by the vibration of the engine. So you're having like basically snow fall on the pad at the worst.
Yeah. And speaking of the power of liftoff, I think, yep, Michael's pulling it up right now. Tori shared this awesome video. So when we were out there setting up remotes, a lot of my fellow photographers pointed out, like, look at that camera right there centered with the flame trench. Like, why would you do that? But I am so glad they did, because we got this shot right here of the initial blast of Atlas firing up and sort of shooting anything that's in the flame trench between the last launch and now. It just gets blasted out of there.
Good, like that particular camera.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. And I wish that the video continued, because I would love to see the tumbling and how far away was this camera, because it wasn't there when we went to pick up our cameras. So they have some way of finding this camera and getting the memory card, or I don't know how it works. Uh, maybe it's transmitted wirelessly. I don't know, but I would love to see if there's more footage. I would love to see more footage. It's because I've seen some of my fellow photographers do similar shots, but not like right in front of the flame trench, and had their cameras go flying. And it's always fun to see that. I mean, it's equipment isn't cheap, but it's still fun to see that kind of stuff. Let's see, how are we doing on time? Let's hit a couple more of these questions, and let's see. King XU, when will the N22 fly again? Oh, that's that's Starliner, right? Is that does Starliner use the N22 or is it N21?
It's the N22, yeah. So what that essentially means is there's no pairing. There's 2 side boosters and 2 engines on the Centaur upper stage. That will be flying again on the Starliner OFT-2 mission, the Orbital Flight Test 2, currently scheduled for around May. However, we have not heard an update on that very recently, so it could be later in the summer. We're not entirely sure. And that will be the second uncrewed flight test of Starliner to hopefully fix the timing and propulsion problems that they encountered on the previous mission.
Right, hopefully. Yeah, I know that they've been working hard on fixing things. There's some stuck valve issues that kept them from lifting off. When that was a while back. Where they were at the pad. They were doing some testing, some final checkouts before. I mean, we even had. I think, yeah, if I remember right, we had even set remotes for that launch. Like we were in the sort of final stages, and then they found these stuck valves.
Yep.
And I think they've been working on that ever since. And we don't have a date, but we are expecting it sometime this year, hopefully first half of this year. And then, as long as that goes well, then they'll fly a crew first, and they won't be in operational status just yet. But then once they fly a crew on a test flight, just like SpaceX did with DM2 with Bob and Doug, Boeing and Boeing will fly that. ULA will launch them, but it's Boeing's mission. So yeah. Let's see. Should we continue on? I want to hit these super chats. We've just got a few of these here. Rough Riders Show saying, let me expand this out here. Too bad KSC press site wasn't open for Starlink. Hope this does not remain an issue. Yeah, that was kind of a bummer. I don't think that it's going to remain an issue. We've talked to various people and tried to get something sorted out to hopefully be able to be on site and bring you guys coverage from up close. But thank you for that support and question. And then we've got Katya T coming in with a super chat, just some support, no question. Thank you very much. And James Van Herens, how are the pads at the Cape numbered and why? Oh boy, they are numbered very randomly. I'll tell you that. When I first moved here, it took me a while to memorize what pads were where, and really, I only remember like reliably the active pads. Like I know, there's 39A, and then directly below that is 41, and then you get 40, and then you go down a little ways, and then there's 37, which is the Delta pad, and then down closer to the point, like of the Cape, you've got 36, which will be which is Blue Origin's pad, and then at the very tip, the very point, you have 46, which is where Astra is going to be launching from. So no rhyme or reason for me. I think what it was is as they were building up the Cape, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there. This is my understanding, but I could be totally wrong. As they were building pads, they were numbered in order, but it was in the order in which they built those pads. And then as time went on, they were just like, here, where can we fit another pad? And they would just slide them in where they could. So you end up where, 60 years later, you've got me showing up on the Space Coast like, wait, how come it goes 39 and then 41 and then 40? I don't, but I think, yeah, I think that's it. Does either y'all, can y'all confirm what I've said here?
Yeah, that is actually how they do it. It was just based on how they built them. So if you're looking up the coast, it goes really we'd give like say like 46, then 17, 18, 36, then 11. It
Yeah.
was just based on where they found a plot of land that was nearby the facilities they needed, and then they just numbered it the next number. So that's why the next pad that is going to be built either by or for SpaceX north of 39B will be called 49 because they already have a pad 48 there,
Right.
which was actually just recently built as well.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more, and then we'll move on to our next topic here. Westy the Third, with just some support and no question. Thank you very much for the support. And then the Bill, asking any speculation on the March 1st deadline with the EIS at Boca from 1 to 10. What would you rank the possibility of the whole operation being forced to shut down and relocated to Florida? Ooh.
Should we hit that now, or should we hit that in the?
Yeah, maybe we should. I already put
Yeah.
it up there. Yeah, maybe we should save that for the Starship segment. I should have done that. Sorry, guys.
Good.
Okay. Actually, I think Michael just put it back in the queue for me. Thank you very much. Okay, so that is going to cover it for the launches we just had, and now let's talk a little bit about Artemis. We have a rollout at some point soon, which I cannot wait to see SLS rolling out because it's not going to have all. I've seen it in the VAB, and it is beautiful, but it has all the movable platforms. It's so you can't really like see the whole thing in all of its glory. But yeah, let's see what are we dealing with Artemis-1 and the lead up to that, Ian.
Yeah. So, and actually, first off, what we're seeing on the screen right now is a video of engine gimbal testing.
Oh
So,
yeah.
those you see right there, it's actually moving. One of the four RS-25 engines on the core stage, they're ensuring that they can rotate and gimbal correctly because that's something you kind of want to have when you have a rocket launch.
Yeah.
So, they're testing those out in the VAB. They're doing final systems, like complete integrated systems testing right now because they have the whole vehicle stacked.
Mhm.
And they're finishing up the testing right now, and they're currently slated for mid-February. They'll be rolling out from the VAB to pad 39B, and that will not be for launch. However, that will be for a wet dress rehearsal, which is essentially where they fill up the vehicle's tanks with liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen, all the propellants. They basically treat it like it's a launch, except they don't ignite the engines, they don't lift off the pad. They have a complete countdown and everything, and then right at 0, they just stop.
Mhm.
So that gives them a lot of time to troubleshoot any issues in the countdown with the computers because, again, this is the first time that an SLS rocket has been stacked. There are going to be problems. It's not there may be problems, there
Mhm.
will be problems.
Right.
And that's exactly why they're doing a wet dress rehearsal so they can find them during a purposeful test rather than right before launch and they have to scrub, they have to put down all the range assets for the day.
Yeah.
It's just to
Or
find
roll
problems
back.
along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is all new. This mobile launcher, the rocket, the spacecraft, none of this has flown. None of it has flown together.
Mhm.
So they're going to be learning a lot. That's why things are getting delayed little bit by little bit because they're finding problems here and there. This is to be expected with the first flight of a rocket. Look no further than Boca Chica, Texas.
Mhm.
The first flight of any Starship vehicle, be it Hopper, SN5, SN8, and now SN20, there's been a lot of delays. So seeing something like SLS being moved several weeks, even several months at a time, is not extraordinary. It's nothing surprising. So
Yeah.
they'll be rolling out to the pad in February for the wet dress rehearsal. They'll do the tank testing, integrated testing on the pad. If and when that's successful, they'll roll back to the VAB, do the final work there, put in the final components, and take out all the remove before flight tags before rolling it back out again for hopefully a launch at the end of March. That's their current target. However, the risk informed date, which essentially gives them a little bit of margin, it takes into account the unknown unknowns that they're going to find, the little problems they're going to get along the way,
Yeah.
is saying they'll be aiming for the next launch opportunity, which is in the early April. So very fluid. And again, that's going to depend on how the wet dress rehearsal goes, hopefully sometime in late February, early March.
One thing I don't hear brought up much, like it was about a year ago, was what about the expiration date on these solids?
Yeah, so they were originally had an expiration date from when they were turned vertical and stacked of 12 months.
Mhm.
And that was basically because since they're solid rocket boosters and their propellant is already loaded inside of them, think of it basically as a big steel tube with a
Mhm.
sort of uh, gum-like consistency.
Yeah, I've heard it
Um,
described like like a pencil eraser.
yeah, like a pencil eraser. And if you think about it, like a pencil eraser is not completely solid. And these are basically a giant casing of just sort of rubber. Again, it's not
Mhm.
literally rubber, but that's the
Yeah.
consistency. And because they're stacked vertical for months, possibly even years at a time, it's going to slowly droop. Like the propellant's going to slowly droop down little by little, sort of
Oh.
like molasses.
Mhm.
And that's a problem because these motors are cast. The propellant is cast inside them to such a specific way and a specific design to have different thrust curves during launch. So basically, they'll throttle up at launch, and then they'll throttle down as the rocket goes through maximum dynamic pressure, then throttle back up. If you have any sort of major deviances with that, that can change your thrust profile, and that can lead to asymmetric thrust, a lot of different problems along the way there. So they had a base expiration date of 12 months, which has then been extended to, I believe, 18 months now, and they can continue inspecting and checking out how they actually are over the next few months.
So it's not a matter of like, oh, we need more time. We'll just give ourselves more time. They're actually going in and inspecting, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, turns out we can get a little more life out of these.
Mhm. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure how much of it is literally have an intern stick their head inside the SRB and say, "Yeah, that looks like rocket to me."
Looks good.
Still rockets, all good.
It looks like a rocket, and we're good to go. But I'm sure there's some kind of calculation, some sort of sensors and inspections you can do with this. But
Yeah, measuring this droop that you're talking about, and
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And there's going to be
Yeah.
droop over time. I'm sure it's just like, does droop exceed X? Is
Mhm.
basically the main concern.
Right.
And also to add to the whole point you made about there will be delays and there will be problems, what should be remembered about Artemis is it will not fly 8, 10, 15 times before there will be people on it. This rocket is like that's a different approach to other rockets such as Starship. They want to have people on this for the second flight. So you have this one test flight, Artemis-1, where you basically need to verify, okay, this worked. The next time we launch this, it will work perfectly because that's what you always have to be in mind, have in mind for crewed flights. So it's understandable they take their time right now because this is the one test they have for these kind of rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this, like you said, it goes against, well, not really goes against as if there's a perfect way to do it, but it's sort of opposite of the way that, say, NASA did it in the 60s with the Apollo program, or that SpaceX is doing it now with Starship or Falcon, where they had launch after launch after launch with modification after modification. This is just an all up single flight, pretty much of the entire rocket and entire spacecraft. And they're testing everything here. It's all up testing to the extreme. So
Yeah.
this has to go right. And that's why, as much as it does suck to see such a cool rocket like this get delayed, it makes sense because you don't want them to rush it. Because if they lose this and lose this opportunity, we have to wait till 2024 for Artemis
Hmm.
2 to launch at the earliest.
Mm.
So this is like a big a big opportunity here and a big not risk, but it's like you have to make sure everything goes right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely make sure that I mean, even if there's not people on it, this is like leading the way to having people on it. So they really want to make sure that everything goes well because we don't want to have to, yeah, wait even longer to get to
Yep.
the moon. Um, Interesting question here about a recent revelation. Untitled Spacecraft says, why do you think Artemis 4 is no longer a landing?
Well, we don't think that. NASA told us that.
Right.
So there was a recent there was a recent conference talking about the progress and the current planning behind the Artemis program. And they revealed there they're talking about how they want to work with Starship. They want to do an not untitled, uncrewed demo landing before Artemis 3 lands. And there they revealed that, yes, Artemis 3 is still on the books to be the first landing, but it will not be going to the Lunar Gateway. That will be for Artemis 4.
Mhm.
And Artemis 4 will not be landing. It will just be a crewed mission to the Lunar Gateway for a set period of time. And from there, the crew will check out Gateway, pretty much certainly do some science experiments using the lunar, the uh, the area around the moon. I'm sure gives you a great venue to do some additional and different science experiments, like observing the moon and things like that. But Artemis 4 will not be doing the second landing. That will be Artemis 5. And you can see
Mhm.
here, this is actually the chart that they gave. Um, Artemis 4 will be launching right to the gateway. And at that point, the gateway will be two, sort of three modules, depends on how you look at it. You'll have the integrated power and propulsion element, along with the Halo module, Northrop Grumman's module. Those will be the initial gateway, and then the Japanese, the international IHAB module, will be launched and docked to that. So the gateway will be slightly built up at that point. We're not entirely sure what the crew will be doing at Gateway. That's probably still being planned out right now. But as of right now, Artemis 4 is not a lunar landing mission. That will be Artemis 3 and 5.
I love the little shadow next to HLS option A, because I'm like, and either that child has seen no update for a long time, or the designer really doesn't want to have Starship there, because that's not how the lander looks.
No, it's not at
Yeah.
all, is it?
I think that's one of their just lunarlander.jpg pictures that they have that they've made before for like press releases.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit a couple of these questions here. David F. wondering how important is the exploration upper stage for the Artemis program?
It's not crucial, but extremely beneficial. So the thing with SLS Block 1, which Artemis 1, 2, and 3 are launching on, is it has a very similar upper stage to the Delta 4, the ICPS. Now, this upper stage was meant to be interim, but it's becoming a bit more than interim, it seems. That allows SLS to launch Orion and only Orion on a single flight. They can't have any large secondary payloads. They could put some CubeSats inside the second stage, but you can't have, say, another module or any other large spacecraft you'd want to take with you. You're limited to just an Orion. Now, the exploration upper stage is sort of a modern version of the Saturn V third stage, the S4B. Now, if there are any Apollo fans out there, you know what the S4B is and how critical it was. So the exploration upper stage will have sort of like a fairing underneath Orion. And in there, you can store a module. So you can launch a new module to the gateway. You can launch a cargo module to the gateway with Orion. And the exploration upper stage is also much larger too. So you can launch more payload to the moon. So you can have Orion, which is already a very heavy spacecraft and is at the limits of SLS Block 1. You can have that very heavy spacecraft, but also a very heavy payload. And as each SLS launch can sort of be a 2-for-1. And from there, you get to have a lot more efficient missions, a lot more capable missions using SLS Block 1B.
Wow, I learned so much listening to you, dude.
Yeah, same. I the only thing I can add, it just looks cool.
It looks cool.
Yeah, like compared the SLS with the ICPS to the EOS, it's so much cooler with the wider upper stage. It looks so great.
And now, when you're talking about having that like sort of secondary bay, what was the word you used? Is it sort of like how with Saturn V that like that's where they tucked the lunar module? Is it that sort of thing?
It's pretty much that kind of ordeal, yeah. But I don't know if you really could, but they're not planning to put like a lunar module inside there. And you can see there actually
Right,
the
but
center
like a gateway
left
module, maybe.
Yeah. And you can see in the graphic that Michael just put up, the center left one is the SLS block that we're talking about. And you could see underneath Orion that little trapezoid looking white section. That's where the secondary payloads will be going.
Okay.
So EUS is pretty much, or Block 1B is pretty much the SLS that everyone's been hoping for and waiting for. Block 1 was always envisioned as just, let's get some basic capabilities online. Let's just test out the core stage and the boosters and the spacecraft, throw a temporary second stage on there. Then we will move to the really cool upper stage and the really capable upper stage. But EUS has been continuously kicked down the road. It was going to fly on Artemis 2, then Artemis 3, now Artemis 4, and Artemis 4 question mark? is really the thing now.
Wow.
But
It does look like a monster.
that's the SLS I'm excited for. Block 1's
Yeah.
pretty cool, but Block 1B is where it starts to become a very, very capable and very exciting vehicle, and I really hope that EUS sticks around.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. A couple other questions here while we're talking about Artemis and SLS. Will NASA try to recover the SLS boosters? Mm-mm.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
There go swimming.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, they may go out there and grab them. I mean, because they used to with the shuttle, right? I actually don't know. I've blurted out no, but will they be grabbing them? Because with the shuttle, they would grab those and bring them back into the port.
Yeah.
And I'm
So
seeing in my back channel, the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no, because with the shuttle, they had parachutes in the pointy nose cone of the booster. They had a parachute.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with SLS, there's the combination of the 5-segment boosters on the side are actually lineage from the Ares-1, Ares-1 fan club, of course. But they actually are lineage from Ares-1, and with Ares-1, there was an issue with payload capacity. They couldn't have a reusable side booster or a reusable first stage booster. So because of that, they haven't incorporated a recovery into the SLS boosters. And it's also a factor of, since you have larger boosters and a larger core stage, you're going to be flying higher and flying faster by the time you're getting rid of the boosters. So they're going to be very scorched and very damaged by the time they re-enter the atmosphere.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yep. So they're going into the drink and going down deep to Davy Jones' locker. All right. Let's see. Idea Flame asking, would SpaceX start their own lunar program using Dragon if SLS availability becomes a severe bottleneck to their commercial ambitions? That's a good question.
So the reason I would think no is because SpaceX target always was Mars. Previously, I think they kind of went the way NASA went with the whole participation now in HLS, but I still don't feel like SpaceX were like, yeah, we really need to go to the moon. It's more they go where NASA is going right now, and just join the program. So I doubt that in that case SpaceX would change plans and do an own moon program. But
Yeah.
just my feelings about that.
Yeah.
Thoughts,
and-
Adrian?
Yeah, so there's a few issues with that. So Dragon is and always was designed to be a low Earth orbit vehicle. There were proposals to send a Crew Dragon with 2 astronauts around the moon, but that would have required some modifications, launching on a Falcon Heavy rocket. It's outside of Dragon's initial design. Dragon does not have a large propulsion system. It does have enough to navigate around low Earth orbit perfectly fine, but it can't, say, insert itself into lunar orbit. It can't dock to a lunar module and put itself into lunar orbit. It doesn't have that kind of capability.
Is it possible to keep Dragon attached to the second stage to give it that maneuverability that it would need?
That's actually a good question and something that I don't know. I mean, I'm sure hypothetically, yeah, you could. You definitely could. But it would require some modification to the second stage to make it live for days instead of just
Right.
hours.
Mhm.
But I think in the end, Starship's coming along. Starship seems promising. They're just all in for that, I think.
Yeah, this is all hypothetical. We have no indication that SpaceX has any intention of using Dragon for lunar missions.
Yeah.
They are full speed ahead on Starship and whatever the Artemis program needs from them with Starship.
Yep.
Let's see. Try to hit a couple. We've got some really good questions. I'm so glad that we have some good questions regarding the Artemis program.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Imtice saying, what would happen if SLS fails in its first flight? Would this kill SLS because they need another test flight?
I would at least say it's not optimal for that because it is really designed to work on the first try. I wouldn't say it's cancelled or it's like over for the program, but it would delay anything that comes after that for several years probably, and spark some investigation what happened on what needs to be fixed in the future. So it wouldn't be great.
Yep.
All All right, and also I just noticed it's probably already scrolled up where I can't read it, but somebody was pointing out Dragon XL. Now, yeah, Dragon XL is a different thing. That is involved in the Artemis program, but I was talking Crew Dragon. Crew
Yep.
Dragon or Dragon XL will not have crew. That is a cargo vehicle. Let's see. We had one come in a little bit ago, sort of a critique here. Matt saying with a very generous super chat. Thank you very much for the support. Saying 10 years, 30 billion taxpayer dollars, legacy parts for a single-use test. What an absolute waste. Well, that's just like your opinion, man. I know that's a sentiment that's out there, and I mean, I've been following the space stuff long enough to know that there's a lot of people that really don't like SLS. But there are some very good capabilities that SLS provides, and maybe there is a future where it's just like, okay, Starship has proven itself time and time again and can accomplish all the tasks that anybody wants to do in space, but we are a long way off from that.
Yep.
There's no reason to cancel a program that's this far along because somebody has something called a Starship that can do a lot of these things on its own.
And so far, Starship is not close to doing all of these things. Like we are talking about, like there's always this discussion about SLS versus Starship, and currently both of them have not had any flight, have not reached orbit. So it's. I feel like it's always a discussion that happens very early in these kind of situations, but I wouldn't have them right now. I would just fly the Artemis hardware you have right now because you are already building that, you're already making that ready, and then get Starship ready, and then when both are operational and both are at the point where you can really judge how they are doing, then you can have a discussion about what do you need, what do you want for the future.
Yeah, and also, okay, there's been some debate over which will reach orbit first, SLS or Starship. Let's say they both reach orbit on the same day. SLS is already more capable because it's further along. It has the Orion capsule and everything. If Starship reaches orbit on that same day, that's great. They've made it to orbit, but they can't do anything with it just yet. They still don't have the payload bay. They don't have any accommodations for crew, which of course crew is a long way off. But you get what I'm saying. As it is right now, they're just trying to get Starship into orbit, not actually do anything useful. Whereas SLS is a step ahead as far as being a useful rocket.
Yep. And like you said, Starship right now in its iteration is not a useful rocket.
Yeah.
The closest upcoming use of Starship that there will ever be, I'd say probably within 2 years, or for the next 2 years, Starship will only be a cargo launch vehicle to low Earth orbit, maybe geostationary transfer orbit. There will not be crew launching on Starship for a good amount of time. We've seen, and now there's a lot of people who are saying crew's going to launch on Starship next year, something like that. No, there's been a lot of like optimism about not optimism, but still just like there's been a lot of hope placed into Starship. And I think there is a lot of possibility that it has, but it still has to prove itself. Starship has not reached above 15 kilometers in the sky. And to be fair, neither has SLS.
Right.
But we have a full flight-ready stack of SLS. We have not had a full flight-ready stack of Starship. We had a full stack of Starship with essentially boilerplate vehicles that were nowhere near capable of flights or even testing. But SLS is much closer to being operational than Starship, in my opinion. And I think, yes, Starship is going to ramp up quickly, but it's going to take us a while to get there. And we're not even close to seeing payloads launching on Starship yet.
Right. And then we have another Artemis-related question in super chat form from John Depker. I am going to say it that way. What are the chances that NASA would grant Roscosmos a seat on an Artemis mission to the moon?
Huh.
Any speculation on that?
That's
It
an
hasn't been
interesting
discussed,
one.
right?
No,
think
I
so.
feel I feel like there's always this tension going on at the ISS already. I feel like both parties are not at the situation right now where they want to talk about further cooperation beyond low Earth orbit. At least it feels like that to me. That is the situation right now.
Yeah, I don't think Russia has expressed any interest in participating in Artemis, have they?
In fact, quite the opposite. They don't want to be involved with it. And
see, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to say that without being sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and NASA already has their international partners. NASA and Canada and the European Space Agency and the Japanese agency are working extremely close together on Artemis. And it's honestly, to me, it's amazing to see international cooperation towards going back to the moon. Like I said earlier in the show, Japan is working on the IHAB module, the International Habitation Module. So Gateway already right off the bat is going to be an international space station around the moon.
Right. That's great.
The European Space Agency, they're making the service module for Orion. Canada is going to be launching a Canadian astronaut to the moon on Artemis 2. It's great for me. And as much as it sucks to not have Roscosmos's expertise along, because they've been flying Soyuz for so long, they've been flying space stations for decades. There's still a very strong backing behind the Artemis program, and that's why I have such great hopes in it and such not high expectations, but I really want to see Artemis succeed, because having international cooperation to go back to the moon is going to make it tougher to cancel. And it's going to make it a lot more appealing to people to see, hey, we're uniting together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Inspirational speech over.
I agree, man. I'm right there with you. I think the more cooperation there can be in space, I mean, that I'm a child of Carl Sagan, so it's like I think humanity should be going into the cosmos, and we should be working together to do it. So anytime I see cooperation in space, it makes me happy. And then one last super chat that's related to Artemis. Why did NASA change the name from Exploration 1 to Artemis? I think it's just because it needed a name, right?
Yeah, I feel like that before was just placeholder, and then they decided, that's the Artemis program.
Yeah, and Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo in...
Yes.
Is it Greek mythology? Is that...
Should be Greek.
Or is it Roman?
I
can't remember. But either way, Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo, so it makes perfect sense. And then that leads me to remember this question I keep having is, are they ever going to give SLS a proper name? You know, like, you know what I mean? Because SLS still feels like Exploration Mission 1. It feels very dry, right? Go ahead.
I feel like if we don't see it with the first launch, it won't happen. Like at this point, it feels like if they want a moment where they give it another name, it would be right before the first launch, like in a press conference by Bill Nelson announcing, okay, this will be our rocket to the moon and beyond. But at this point, it feels, in a weird way, it feels right to call it SLS because it has been for so long. So I'm a fan of that name. Like, I like it. So
it's just, it is what it is now. It's like SLS. That's what. But I would say, and I wasn't around before the shuttle. The shuttle's first launch, I believe, was 81, which is a year before I was born. But I think they called it STS until they started calling it the space shuttle. Because all the missions were STS, Space Transportation System, right? And so officially it was the STS, that Space Transportation System, but it was more commonly known as the Space Shuttle. So I wonder if they'll get one. Oh, hey.
Yeah, I see.
I just got a Chris G in the back channel saying, correct. All right, I got one.
I just waited for Chris in the back channel to just start typing.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. And I just wanted to point out Musical Wolves with a little bit of support saying it'll look weird seeing the core tank and no shuttle. Not much to say there, but yep. Thank you for that support, Musical Wolves. And before we get to Starship, I don't think we'll probably not spend too much time on this, but there is another small satellite launch provider that will be launching from the Cape here for the first time ever. I'm excited. I know we're all excited. My photographer friends are excited. It's like anytime we get together, that is a topic of conversation, like Astra, yes. So, yeah, what do we know here about Astra? Other than we don't know a launch date.
Yeah,
So
Astra
don't ask.
will Astra will launch from the first time from the Cape from Slick 46, and will bring their first payload, I think, to orbit, carrying 4 NASA CubeSats to space. As you just said, we don't have a launch date as of yet. We only have confirmation of a successful static fire of the rocket that will be used for this flight, and just waiting now for the announcement of the launch date, and then hopefully see it fly soon. Yeah, which will be very cool.
And it should be noted that whenever they do go for a launch, we are partnering with them, and we'll be helping out with streaming that. So just so y'all know, this will be where you are going to want to watch that launch from the Cape. And for anyone that wants to come see it in person, I will tell you that this will be one of the best launches to watch from Cocoa Beach / Cape Canaveral, because it's right out there at the point of the Cape. And so unlike some of the other some of the other launch pads that get more action, you can actually see this launch pad from the Cape, because it's or from Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral, because it's right out there at the point of the Cape.
Wow, what a picture.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. That's
awesome.
great. I think this is one from John Krause. That is awesome.
Yep. That's cool. And the cool thing about this is not Astra's launch pad. This is like how SpaceX has their launch pads. This is just a multi-user launch pad that's at the tip of Cape Canaveral, that's designed for this.
It's a clean pad,
actually,
right?
What was that?
It's called a clean pad, right?
Sort of. So there is actually a dedicated launch mount for the Minotaur rockets here, but it's also designed to have like flat concrete space to just truck your rocket up as one does, roll it vertical, and just launch it from pretty much a concrete pad. And if anyone has been in the space community for about 5 years now, you'll remember back in 2017-ish, Vector Space, talk about a throwback. They were an old company, sort of like Astra, launching very, very small payloads on a very simple rocket. They were going to launch from Slick 46 before the company unfortunately went under. They had a very similar setup to Astra, where they would have basically truck in the rocket, roll it vertical on the mobile transportable launch pad, and just launch it from a concrete pad. So this kind of fulfilling the destiny that Vector Space laid down. But very cool to see. From launching from a concrete pad. This is not launching from a dedicated pedestal like at Slick 40 or at 39A or something. This is
right. Astra shows up with a couple of semi trucks, right?
Yep.
And then
few cargo
that
containers.
That has all of the gear they need, all the ground service equipment that they need. Am I right in saying that? Do they have to plug into the ground here at all? Like maybe some electricity or something, but like, is there any kind of other infrastructure other than just here's your pad, launch a rocket?
I think they have everything. They have everything ready as long as they can get a power and a data connection. I feel like we've heard.
All right.
Yeah, I think I remember that as well.
And then we have a question here from Luca Vandecastile. Probably saying that wrong, but the question is, did Astra get their launch license for their upcoming launch? I think referring to the how they've been waiting on the FAA license.
We have not had final FAA approval, and that's one of the reasons that the launch date is currently unclear.
Yeah. So there you go. Yes, super excited to see Astra launch from here. Of course, we saw their previous launch attempts and successes out of Kodiak, and just I'm so excited that they've come to the Cape so soon. I was worried that it was like going to be or like that they may not ever come to the Cape, and maybe launch from other places far and wide that I won't be able to see. I get a little greedy. I want all the rockets to come here. Okay, this
Can
is
I
the
have one?
premiere. What?
Can I just have one? I'm not greedy. I don't want
Just want one.
everything. I just want
You don't even
one
want to. You don't
rocket.
necessarily even want a big one, a small one, a particular one. You just want a one. I'll take a one.
Yeah.
I'll send
Yeah,
you a
one.
bottle rocket.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
It might get confiscated in transit because.
It probably will.
Okay, so yeah, we usually like to save our Starship stuff till last because we will go on and on and on, and yeah, so now it has come time for Starship stuff. Let me get there on my documents. So also, by the way, if you haven't already, for the Starship fan on the go, we have our roundup video that just came out earlier this week, or I can't remember what day it came out. Maybe it was last Sunday. And also just published today is a roundup article at NASASpaceflight.com. So if you find it difficult to keep up, that's a great way to stay caught up. Who wants to start? Adrian, what do we got going on down there at Starbase?
I feel we have to talk about the main content of that article today, which is that we have some pictures of Raptor 2 in McGregor on the test stand. You can here see the article by Chris Bergen with pictures by Gary Blair, where we can see two Raptor 2s on the test stand, which is the next version of the Raptor engine we have been waiting for a few weeks, months. I lost track of time. And yeah, exciting to finally see them on the test stand and getting ready to fire these. And yeah,
so this is
I'm
like
very excited.
This is like a dual test stand, right? They can mount up two Raptors at once, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is their brand new test stand. That's they built it middle of last year, I think. And this is meant to be, you have two engines. They're firing vertically because you want to fire an engine vertically because on Starship, the engines aren't horizontal like they are on the original test stand. Having them vertical can simulate the correct wear on the gears and the correct flowing of propellants to more accurately simulate what a launch is like.
Makes perfect sense. Is there anything that from these photos that we can glean? What do you guys see with your Raptor eyes?
I would say they look cleaner. So it's always because we are still far away here, and we have not like perfectly close. But I would say if you compare them to the Christmas tree we had before on previous Raptor versions, this looks way cleaner. This looks like what we expected about Raptor 2 being like more in outside appearance. And yeah, I'm very excited to see the first close-up shots when they someday arrive in Starbase.
Yeah, we still have yet to see an actual Raptor 2 show up in Starbase, right? We're still patiently waiting.
Yep. And it's expected, I think, that Booster 7 will have Raptor 2 support as well as possibly Ship 24. So given that both of them are approaching, well, Booster 7 is like halfway through assembly already, and Ship 24 is inching closer and closer to stacking, I'd say I would not be surprised to see a Raptor 2 engine be delivered by the end of this month. But again, that is extremely fluid. It depends on how well these engines we're looking at right now are performing.
Right. Yeah. By the end of this month, we're already, that gives us about a week to prove you right.
What we also should mention about Raptor 2 is the brand new factory that is just appeared in McGregor over the last few months and is getting outfitted at this point and is getting close to put out Raptor 2 engines next to the test stand in McGregor. So they no longer need to ship these around the United States to get them to the test stand and fire them there. They can just build these like not far away from the test stand, build them there, and then ship them to Starbase. So also an exciting development in Raptor production, and I'm really curious to hear when they finally will start putting out Raptors there.
Yeah, I think I see the door where they'll come out on the on the right side there.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's gonna be cool to see.
So also in the last week we saw a GSE tank test, right? GSE 4. What do we know there?
So GSE4, it's a
How
battle in
could
the
you-
community right now because no
Like,
one
what
knows.
was up with it. Yeah.
Just like, oh, but no one knows exactly what happened with it. So we knew that they were going to do some sort of testing with it, liquid nitrogen testing. As you can see here, it was fully filled up with liquid nitrogen. And this tank GSE4 was actually built last year, earlier on in the year, to sort of demonstrate the design of the GSE tanks, which themselves are based on Starship parts. So this little tank was built out of just some few leftover segments and basically tested to make sure everything worked. Now, they rolled it back out to the site recently to do some testing, and then this happened where it popped. Now, it's not entirely known. We've heard absolutely nothing about whether or not it was planned, whether it was just a normal test and it popped out of nowhere, or if they were just testing it to failure. It's not clear what happened there, and it's been a subject of debate recently.
Yeah. It's not
Um,
unheard of for SpaceX to test something to failure. That wouldn't be a
Absolutely.
surprise. But
Yep,
yeah.
they've done that several times before, and it wouldn't be a shock to hear them like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so either way, the tank popped, and what that entails, what that means, we're not entirely sure. Maybe that means that, hey, the tank popped at twice the pressure they were expecting, or maybe it was like the tank popped at half the pressure they were expecting.
Right.
We don't really know what that means. So the tank popped, that's about it. And it's showered the site in liquid nitrogen, like you can see. Like the
Right.
cars and everything around is just getting blanketed. But
It makes me think of movie Demolition Man. Anybody have y'all? You guys are probably too young for that. Well, those of y'all out there that know what I'm talking about, they freeze Sylvester Stallone with some liquid nitrogen. He goes in this tank and then they like freeze him, and he's like, "Rah!" That's how they. That's like prison in the future, supposedly.
I'm more
Oh.
thinking about Star Wars Episode 5, but
Okay, yeah,
because
that
of-
works too. Yeah, frozen
Yeah.
in carbonite. Yeah.
yeah. So that was my association with it. But yeah, there has been some debate in the community, I would say, about this, because there were like some people were arguing, yeah, but why didn't they clear like all the porta potties away from there if they knew it would explode? And that there was debate about that. And the problem is, as long as Elon is not having like a good day to tweet right now about it, we just don't know. And again, it would not be a surprise that they intended to test this to failure.
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, let's keep marching on, and then once we cover all the stuff we have over here, then we'll start hitting these questions. That sound good?
Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah, we apparently we've spotted the cargo door prototype.
Yeah.
That's actually exciting. That kind of goes along with what we were talking about before with Starship. Once it makes it to orbit, it still has yet to do something useful and meaningful, but having the cargo door is going to be very important. You're going to want to get stuff from the inside to the outside.
You could say it's necessary.
One might say.
Yeah, because that's a huge nose cone, and you could fit a lot of payloads in there.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you going to do with them if you don't have a door? So
Right.
you could fill it with hundreds of Starlink satellites easily. And what are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
But yeah, so this, you can see that barrel section in front, the 4-ring barrel, that is the so-called cargo bay pathfinder because it has some indications that it may be for testing out cargo bay doors.
Mhm.
Now, that was actually Ship 22's nose cone barrel section, which is sort of hinting at Ship 22 not being a thing anymore, kind of.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes along with the fact of Ship 21 stopping stacking too. And actually, if you want more information on that, check out the most recent Starship recap video narrated by yours truly.
Aha.
And I discussed like how Ship 21 has stopped stacking, Ship 22 is in limbo, and Ship 24 is continuing onward. And you can actually see on the right is a new smooth nose cone prototype.
Yeah, it looks
Um,
nice.
It looks very nice. It looks a lot better than the past one too. And the fact that it has hooks on it means that it could be, at the very least, maybe being stacked on top of the cargo bay door Pathfinder, maybe even flying with Ship 24 or something.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Interesting.
yep.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see how the like the clamshell thing works. I mean,
Yeah, that's gonna be curious
Yeah.
because that's the nose cone's a big structural piece, and like one of the things in engineering is, at least traditionally, you can't have a door be a structural member.
oh
Like how in
yeah,
your house, your door does not support weight.
right.
Now, Whether or not they could actually have the door be some sort of structure through structural latches, that's to be seen. But like we saw in the space shuttle, the payload bay doors, and Chris is going to be proud of me for saying this, I think, the payload bay doors were not structural in supporting the shuttle. The whole
Yeah.
structure was the belly of the shuttle, and the payload bay doors were sort of stacked on top of it. So that's why the belly of the shuttle was so overbuilt.
Yeah.
Again, just an
So,
analogy.
sort of like a convertible car.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you need to take certain things into consideration when you don't have the cab or the cabin, actually providing more structural support.
Yep.
Okay, so
I'm still
oh, go ahead.
I am still also curious how they will deploy the satellites, because right now what they do is basically off you go, fly. And if you look at Starship right now, there's a wall there, so you cannot just send them straight. You have
you'll
to
have to
have some sort of
shoot 'em
angle.
Yeah.
So that will be also interesting to see how they finally want to deploy these, and what kind of system they use to get them out of the nose cone.
Yep. And it's interesting too, because when you have a cargo launch, the payload bay door prototype that we're looking at here seems to be just the nose cone barrel section will deploy a little bit. But then it makes me think, what are you doing with the massive space inside the nose cone itself? Is that just wasted space, or you keep it like a secondary payload where you just shift it into the barrel section and deploy it out there? That's making me curious as to what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I wonder if we'll ever actually see the cargo door being worked on the ground, because it's gonna the doors will be heavy. So do you even want to unlatch them and try opening, or maybe that'll be in some facility somewhere else behind closed doors?
I mean, at some point you have to unlock them because you want to put things in there. So
oh, well, duh.
Yeah. Well, while I would expect
Excellent
them,
point.
yeah. I mean, for later payloads, for like customer payloads, I expect them to do that in clean rooms. But I wouldn't be surprised if SpaceX for their own payloads has less care about how they handle these payloads and how to bring them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, speaking of nose cone too, people are mentioning in chat, the methane header tank is actually being moved to the nose cone as well. And we saw that Michael Baylor, who's actually producing the stream right now, he tweeted Elon, because we saw Ship 24's common dome section being sleeved with a barrel without having the header tank inside of it. And so he asked Elon, is this the header tank being moved to the nose cone? And Elon confirmed that it is. So the nose cone will now have the oxygen and methane header tanks.
Real quick, this SpaceX just tweeted this. They just conducted their static fire of Falcon 9, so they are targeting Thursday, January 27th at 6:11 p.m. Eastern Time for the launch of the Cosmos SkyMed second generation FM2 to orbit from Slick 40 in Florida. So
Cool.
there we go. We've got another launch coming up this week. Excellent. Sorry. Now continue. Breaking news right here on NSF Live.
You heard it here first.
That's right.
But yeah, so moral of the story, the methane header tank along with the liquid oxygen header tank will both be inside the tip of the nose cone now. Now, what exactly that will look like, we don't know. There's been some speculation that it could just be the normal oxygen header tank with sort of a donut-shaped methane header tank around the bottom of it. We've not seen any parts like that. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but be on the lookout in the next few days or weeks to see.
Yeah, see that's maybe it shouldn't be surprising, but in my head, I'm picturing like the crew version. I'm old school. I saw the original interplanetary transport system unveil. And I'm picturing like windows all the way up to the point of Starship. But now we're saying that we've got header tanks up there. Well, you don't really want to be hanging around, around these header tanks, I would imagine. I wonder if there's if it's probably just changed. They don't necessarily have to take the windows all the way up to the point. It's interesting that's that they've moved those header tanks up there to the point. But I think it's all in the name of getting that landing to be successful, right? That the flip and burn, does it have something to do with that?
Yeah, because having the header tanks up front, because when Starship's coming back to land, there's very little propellant inside of it. And you have the heavy Raptor engine in the back. So you need to have some sort of counterweight in the front so that you don't need to have the flaps moving as actively and being like as far deployed. So you can have a sort of balance so the flaps just correct a little bit. So they have the header tanks with all that extra landing fuel mass up front to sort of balance out the Raptor engines at the back. And that's the reason why you have the header tanks in the nose cone.
Also, you have not have the problem with all the sloshing fuel and oxidizer in your tanks while the flip is going, because you easily get in a situation there where you just suck in dry air, or like air, into the Raptors, and they don't like that.
You don't want that. Yeah, somebody made a point, and I'll see what y'all think that here in the chat, Core Space saying, well, that they added 3 more Raptors, so they needed more mass up towards the tip. So maybe that has something to do with why they moved the other header tank.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Speculation zone, folks.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's going. I saw someone else in chat and asking, or Paul Kelly asking, will Ship 24 have 9 engines? And that makes me curious because we don't know exactly when the header tank's getting moved, or actually we know it's not Ship 24. We don't know if Ship 24 is going to have 9 engines. So are they just planning ahead? Are they going to have 9 Raptor engines on the 24?
Right. Now let's talk about this other super exciting development that was shared by our friend Harry Stranger.
Yes.
Follow him on Twitter because he likes to post some very interesting satellite photos that sometimes that's the best info that we can get at the time.
Yep.
So what do we got here?
Yes, SpaceX submitted plans for Roberts Road. For those who are not who don't know that, that's a facility that SpaceX plans to use at the Cape. So it's very close to the pads at the Cape. So I think it's like 11 kilometers away from 39A.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a little further than the VAB is from 39A.
And they have planned a giant area and giant buildings there. They are planning a 320,000 square foot building with a future expansion possibility of 192,000 square foot. Just to bring that to perspective, that's a bigger footprint than the VAB. So just to bring that into, and here we can see a comparison with the tent area of in Boca Chica, and you can see the footprint of whatever they are building there is bigger than the whole like tent and protection area in Starbase right now. So what we don't know the height. What should be clear here, we don't know the what they are doing there. We don't know if it will be a VAB or like a production area, but we know it's big. It's a giant building, and they have some plans there, obviously.
It turns out to be Giga Kennedy. Giga KSC.
They built Teslas there for some reason.
They start pumping out Model 3. I seriously doubt that.
They lease out a high bay in the vehicle assembly building, and they start producing Tesla semi-trucks in there.
Right, yeah.
Elon is just is used to it at this point. Like everything he builds is just producing Model 3s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, also in the plan, so next to the huge building, there are 2 other smaller buildings. And what's their exact size? I don't exactly know. But there's some buildings which some people have looked up, and it's actually the same footprint as the wide bay in Boca Chica that's currently being built. What was that?
Two-thirds of the wide bay.
2/3 of the wide bay.
Each.
Yep. You can actually see them in the center. They're 2 rectangular buildings. Now, they do have the footprints labeled, however, they don't have the heights labeled. So these buildings could just be an office building. They could just be, I don't know, like a ground fabrication building like we have in Boca Chica. Or they could be like a sort of high bay where they stack the vehicles. And again, that brings into the question, there's a lot of uncertainties here. Is SpaceX going to lease High Bay 2 in the vehicle assembly building? Are they going to build their own facilities to do this? Where are they going to stack and store these vehicles? So if they do build high bays there, that's kind of going to answer one half of the question there.
Yeah.
But it looks like they may be building a self-contained Starship facility there, and with permanent buildings and not tents.
I really think this is like, I think that is what will happen, because this is warning speculation, big warning speculation here.
We need like a little thing to go up on top with like this spinning red light, like wee speculation zone.
Yeah. So why I think the fact that this is the big building is so close to the tent area in Boca, and the fact that there's two buildings that are close to white base size next to it, like it just is. It looks like if you want to copy what you're doing in Boca and just do it like in a little bit more less tent way,
less tint,
like
not as tinty.
yeah, less tense involved.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what you would do. You would build two bigger buildings to stack, and you would build one giant footprint as a replacement for the whole ring production and general production area of Starbase. So it just feels that way to me. Of course, it's speculation.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yep.
Anything else y'all want to add before we start taking some of these questions? We are going to go over a little, y'all. It's obvious. It's 4:30 Eastern time now. We usually stop about this time, but we're gonna keep on pressing on just to try to answer as many of these questions as we can, because I know everybody likes to have their questions answered about Starship stuff.
I have one last thing before the questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have some movement in Starbase the past few, like the last few days. Because ship 20 is now next to the chopsticks. And we don't really know what they're going to do with it, but it's just hanging out there next to the chopsticks. So maybe some stacking test at some point coming up.
I'm throwing this question up there because it's right along with what you're saying. Morgan saying, when do you expect a new S20 stack on B4 with the chopsticks? Don't know.
I would say in a few weeks. Like if I just based on this, I would speculate in a few weeks.
Yeah, they just did that test, a couple tests with going up and down the tower. They used those what do they call those? Ballast balls. They fill them up with water and lift them up to test, I guess, just testing the strength, right?
Yep.
Let's see what else we got. This is the one that we put back into the queue from earlier, the super chat from the Bill. The speculation about the March 1st deadline with the environmental assessment. And then the ultimate question was, from 1 to 10, what do you rank the possibility of the whole program being forced to shut down and relocate to Florida?
Want to start, Ian?
Okay, just throw it on me. No, it's fine. To answer the second question, I'm going to give that a solid 2 out of 10.
Okay.
Even if they were handed a finding of this is not good, you need to do a lot more work here, they're not going to tear it down and put a grass field in the place. At the very worst, they might mothball the facility and just start beating the crap out of ramping up Roberts Road facility. That's my guess at the absolute worst plan. They are handed something which is like, okay, you have to have a bit of a delay to look over X, Y, and Z a bit more closely, then we'll get back to you in the summer or something. I don't think it would be the end of the world. I think they can just keep building the infrastructure that they need, like say build, like there's been you're seeing expansion on the north side of the production site. They can start maybe expanding to build pad B. They can finish building the orbital pad A. So there's a lot more work that still needs to be done that they could ramp up if they can't do any flights now. But it's a very fluid situation that depends on what the FAA says in the end. Yeah, my thoughts.
Any thoughts, Adrian?
Actually, I was going to go with 2 out of 10 as well, with the same reasoning. Like I feel like it wouldn't. They wouldn't go as far as stopping it all.
They're not. I agree. And I mean, I know even less than y'all do about it, but I agree. I think the chances of them shutting it all down is pretty slim. Spacey Avionics asking, when do you think we'll see Raptor 2 at Starbase? We kind of touched on that. Hopefully soon, right? I think was the consensus.
And when I said by the end of the month, in my mind, it's still January 10th. So when you said I only have a week left, I'm like, but there's like 3 weeks left. I'm like, oh, it's the 23rd.
No, there's not.
Time flies.
Okay. Untitled Spacecraft saying, has any Starship infrastructure been spotted at LC-39A? Well, there's been activity. I'm not sure that you would call it infrastructure. There's been some. What do you guys know? I mean, I know I live here and all, but I don't have I don't have access to 39A, and you can't see much from the beach.
Yeah. Well, they are building the launch pad, that's for sure. Elon said that it's going to be similar but upgraded from what they have in Boca Chica right now. So it's going to have the launch mat with the 6 legs. It's going to have the integration tower with the chopsticks, probably. There is a landing pad that was partially built there. They basically cleared an area and filled it in with gravel back in 2019 when they had different plans for Starship. That's been abandoned. They tore down the existing launch mount for Starship they were building. So it's a lot of flux right now, 39A. There's been no direct Starship hardware spotted. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see any extra Starship hardware beyond launch infrastructure until maybe the fall, to be honest.
Yeah, and actually, some of our updates come in the form of satellite imagery. Another good reason to follow our friend Harry Stranger, because whenever he can, he will post some pretty cool photos. A lot of times, that's the best that we can do, is look at it from the sky. Let's see. I'm trying to find ones that we haven't really already covered. Buff for BCS saying, question about Starbase and the propellant plant there. Is that plant operational yet?
I wouldn't, as long as I don't see any methane delivered to this plant, I would not go as far as saying operational. We know it's partial operational because they did some tests with the orbital that were supported by the orbital tank farm. Oh, the plant. Oh, sorry, I pronounced. Then I don't know.
I think we have seen liquid nitrogen coming out of it. I think we saw either liquid nitrogen. Jack told me this like one time a few weeks ago. They have either liquid nitrogen or liquid oxygen being currently produced at the propellant plant at Boca Chica. So there's some sort of operations going on right there.
Jack told me as well, and I forgot as well. So sorry, Jack.
This one, I hope I don't give you whiplash. This one is referring to Artemis, but Starship is part of the Artemis program. Will the Canadians be supplying arms for the Lunar Gateway? Do we know yet? I think we do. No, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, they're on board with Artemis and
Canadarm3.
Canadarm3.
They like their
Excellent.
arms.
Yeah.
That's honestly, they're really good at that.
They're really
They
good
built
at
them.
it, yeah.
They made them for the space shuttle. They made them for the space station, and they're making it for the Gateway now. And the cool thing of Canadarm3 is it's going to be partially autonomous, so they can just do its own thing instead of having always ground support. And it's got a lot more flexibility too. So like I think it has like one extra, what's it called? One extra like pivot point. Yeah, one extra joint or something. So like it can fully move all of its, I don't know, its arminess.
Yeah, it's arminess. Yeah, tintiness and arminess. These are the new words for today's episode of NSF Live. I'm going to try to run through these super chats real quick. We do have a couple questions, so don't run off. But I just want to thank these people for supporting us. We've got Connexion Especial, and they are a PadRat member. They just became a PadRat member. Thank you for that ongoing support. We've got Jim Cavett just saying happy Sunday and thanks y'all. CJ Mitchell saying, just support. Thanks for what you do. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you do, which is coming and joining and chatting and watching and telling your friends. Musical Wolves with a question. How close is SpaceX to a Raptor 2.0 static fire on a Starship?
I would say months. Like, I wouldn't expect it very soon because we know they have like 2 vehicles right now there. They're just they're outfitted with Raptors and they're not like using Raptor 2. So it will still take some time for them to get a vehicle ready, which will probably like be Booster 7,
which will be one with 33 or still at 29.
That'll be
33. Yeah,
33. That's what I thought.
And that will probably be the first one that uses Raptor 2 as well. So that's a good guess. That might be the vehicle. So watch for Booster 7.
All right.
Maybe.
Divine East, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. We appreciate that. Musical Wolves again with another question. Could SpaceX put the Raptors on a SPMT and launch Starship from from an SPMT if an issue with SH license causes delay? What's the SH license?
Super heavy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you absolutely could. Like, no doubt in my mind, you definitely could. You would destroy the SPMT. You would have some fines on your contract for renting the SPMT. The roadway would turn to gravel, and you would have the Texas Department of Transportation knocking at your door. But
And
sure,
you would
do it.
probably damage your vehicle as well because you have like no protection of sound. Like it would be fun, you could do it, but
you have asphalt just shooting back up at the engines. That would be disastrous.
Oh man. Yeah,
Just
good question.
fine.
Musical Wolves. I know you're probably joking, but good question nonetheless. Anonymous saying, what are the odds that Booster 4 and Ship 20 are scrapped before flight, especially with Raptor 2 so close?
I would, at this point, I think I said it on the show before, but if somebody told me like, yeah, they announced that they scrapped these and they will not fly these, I wouldn't be surprised. Mm-hmm. So we know that, according to an Elon tweet of like a few weeks ago, we know that still it's the plan to fly them, but I wouldn't be surprised based on all the other hardware coming and all the upgrades are arriving. At some point, I would not be surprised if they decide, okay, let's just fly the next generation.
Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah, they've gotten a lot of test data out of them. Like with Ship 20, they've had the first Raptor vacs. They've done the first Raptor vac test fires. Booster 4, they've done their first cryogenic tests on the orbital pad. They've gotten a lot of testing out of them so far, but it's gotten to the point where between the delays with pad infrastructure and the delays with the FAA, mostly pad infrastructure, even if the FAA gave them a go-ahead 2 years ago, they'd still be in the same position. Based on the delays that they've had and the vehicles they're building now, Booster 7 seems to be, in theory, a lot better than Booster 4. So why not just go for that and have an upgraded ship too?
Yep. Good point. John Depker saying retractable lift / landing points on Starship. Any thoughts on this potential issue? Asking for a friend. Yeah, right. You're asking for yourself. I know you, John.
Lifting points.
Retractable lifting point. Yeah, like there has been the question about, how do you secure those tiles where those lifting points were, and then also the landing points. Like I think they're talking about the little hooks, where they'll come down on the chopsticks.
I would expect them to stay. Like I would not expect them to retract or something. I would expect them to be there.
You don't think?
Yeah,
No.
I think so too, because having something stationary and welded onto the side is probably the strongest that you can do. Having on a sort of retraction mechanism, or where you can like flip them out and in, that extra hinge or that extra piston or whatever is just another point of weakness, because the further I'm trying to explain physics here and just like engineering mechanics and statics, but like the further you are, the further support is from a thing holding weight, the more stress and the less weight it can carry. So if you have it supported on a piston here rather than it being welded onto the side of the booster, you're going to be able to support a lot less force with that, and you'll need to make it heavier.
Yeah. All right. Tarek S. Didn't SpaceX just win a contract to demonstrate delivery of items to different locations around the world for DoD? That's Department of Defense.
Oh,
I think so.
Yeah, there was this contract, yeah.
But it's still a little ways off before they actually demonstrate, right? This, like, winning a contract and doing the thing are usually separated by several months, if not even years, right?
Yeah, like they're not going to put some warheads onto Ship 24 and do that as part of the orbital flight test.
Let's go. Okay, Jacob Riedel, a container system for payloads would do the job. Oh, this must have been referring to something we were talking about earlier, but thank you for that support. Smooth Juice saying, no question, just a thank you to NSF for documenting history. Thrusters on full. Yeah. And then the last one, wait, I see my name in this one. From Airvale saying to buy Steven an alligator costume so he can sneak in and get some up close photos. Talking about for 39A. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That would work.
I'm
Crawl
sure
through
that
miles
would
of
work.
swamp.
Yeah, they do refer to the alligators as the Kennedy Space Center security. So yeah, I would definitely have to blend in with them, but I don't know. I don't know about that. But thanks for the thought. We'll try to put that to good use. In fact, I would like to say while we're thanking people for their support, thanks to our members for their ongoing support. That's sort of like a monthly thing, and you get special perks. You get access to a special Discord channel with other rocket nerds like yourself, and special emojis and stuff like that, fun stuff. But what that allows is, like I asked earlier, what y'all thought about the second angle for the Atlas launch. Well, that wouldn't be possible without the support, because the gear that it takes to add that second angle, it costs money. And so all of y'all's support is definitely appreciated because it gives us the ability to do that. And I saw in chat that you guys seem to like it. Every person's response that I saw was, yes, that's cool. We like the second angle. So personally, I've told the team, like, I would like to start doing that. Like, I didn't realize I was going to like it as much as I do, for a couple reasons. There's just the challenge of tracking a rocket is fun. I mean, I've done it with still photography, but with still photography, you're like, you kind of look and maybe change your settings and then you're up again. But with like tracking it through its entire flight, for some reason, I think it's super fun and super challenging. And also with the secondary angle, a lot of times I can be like in a public setting, which is totally fun to me because I get a lot of people coming up asking questions. And when I've spent a lot of time at the press site, and I forget how much I love that, of having people in the public that don't know much about it. Like, they see me with a camera and they just assume I know everything. And, I try to quell those assumptions, but I'm usually able to answer questions. It's just super cool, to be able to talk to people in the public and then offer you guys that secondary view. So all that is to say, thank you for the support. We wouldn't be able to do this without y'all. Yeah, stay tuned for all of our other stuff. Remember, we've got our daily Starship videos. We've got our the wrap-up Starship video that came out last week. We've got our wrap-up Starship article that is now live on NASASpaceflight.com. And yeah, I think that's going to be it. Anything to add, y'all? Adrian, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was like, I had so much fun with the show. So yeah. Thanks for the almost 2 hours.
Yeah, and Ian, thank you also for joining us.
Yep, absolutely. Again, it was fun to be here. This was a really fun show.
All right, and I'm Stephen Marr, and we'll talk to y'all later.
Have a good one.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
Chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantis.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Body down, feet off. Bring in, feet off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.